Hello and welcome to another edition of the Leader Campus Voices. My name's Wildermuth, and with me is John Blake. John is a lead cybersecurity engineer at the, what is it called? MITRE? MITRE?
MITRE?
MITRE Corporation. 3 years you were legislative affairs officer at the NSA, and about a year and a half to 2 years you were senior strategic commanders action group with the U.S. Cyber Command. So you have quite a resume there, and we thank you for speaking with us today about cybersecurity to some extent. And that's pretty much my first question. We're running into a situation where we have so many hackers, it seems. Every other day somebody seems to be hacked. What can leaders do to protect private information for their corporation, companies, or their organizations?
There are several layers of solutions to that. I would say the first layer is keep your systems patched. Keep them maintained as the vendors say they should. There was a recent issue of ransomware in Baltimore, not far from where I live, and that's because they hadn't patched their systems in 3 years.
Oh, gee.
So they hadn't taken care of recommendations that the manufacturer, Microsoft, of the operating system had recommended. So a lot of businesses, and in varying degrees, are leaving themselves open.
So
I would say that
I just don't want to interrupt.
Solution is proper cyber hygiene.
Okay, and what do you think about patching? Is what you're calling it? That means downloading updated information on from the security program that you use.
Not only your operating system, like I'm talking to you today on my iMac desktop computer. Periodically, I get upgrades, major and minor, from Apple for the operating system that runs on this machine. I accept and automatically install those. Likewise, the applications that run on the machine, Chrome, Firefox, common browsers, need to be patched regularly because they have security weaknesses that have been identified.
Okay, and how would a personal person go about getting these patches? You might say, is it with the kind of security system they use, or is that from Google and the others itself?
Usually the vendors will notify you when patches are ready. Sometimes it's rather subtle. I know on my Chrome browser, there is a little light up in the corner, which will, if it's turning green, it says, I need you to okay a patch.
Okay.
There's a similar feature in Firefox as well.
Okay. Individual needs come about as well, and people are concerned with foreign intervention as well. Is how has hacking advanced to other foreign countries, such as Russia recently with obviously the 2016 election, and North Korea? It seems like these are the two biggest of concerns, well, China as well.
There's certainly the top five, which would be Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and then sort of all others, third transnationals. So that's not necessarily in priority order, but somewhere close to it. And nation states are capable of weaponizing computer viruses, taking advantage of known weaknesses in systems before they can be patched, or if they are patched.
Yeah. What the latest thing that seems to have bothered me is recently there has been that film that was released that showed Speaker Nancy Pelosi acting like she was drunk. How can people take a look at or how can people find out if this stuff is actually true or not?
That's a harder one to crack. Certainly the government is not going to police all forms of audio, video, pictures, and such that are out there to verify.
Oh, you just froze. Let's see if we can get you back.
Twitter.
There you go.
There, okay, I'm back.
Yeah, you froze for a minute.
Okay. So the best way to address the problem is to contact the agency that's hosting it. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and have them investigate.
Is it, and how safe is our information from Facebook and these others as well? They're making money off of selling our information in many cases, but how can we be sure that they're also protecting our information with their security?
That's an interesting question. My greater worry is what malware or misinformation makes it past the filters at Facebook and elsewhere. If you ever get a link that says "click on me" and you don't know where it came from, by all means, don't do it.
Yes, there's also the prince from where's that at? I don't know, Nambia or someplace like that. That also
I've received many letters from my friends in Nigeria that would like
yeah, Nigeria
to give me money, and that goes back over 10 years.
And also, there's the newest one, I guess, is something coming out of is it Microsoft that has been sending a Fisher that I understand. Have you seen anything about this?
I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. There are weaknesses in Microsoft that the Microsoft will identify, and if they're serious enough, they announce them to the public to immediately patch.
How
are available?
Okay, and viruses, other viruses, are there ones that we have to be real careful of? Are there viruses that you know of that can really hack your system and hold it ransom?
There are many viruses that are out there. I'm more concerned about the intent of the person who created or deployed it. If I hate to categorize people, but if it's a 16-year-old young man or young woman in their basement doing it just for fun, it's destructive, but it's less worrisome to me. I worry about nation-state threat actors deploying something to take money from our banking system.
Okay, if you're like as I said in the introduction, you were part of the cyber command. In your opinion, and you said that while we were off camera, you were talking about how your opinions are your own and not part of whatever is being said from the government standpoint or anything of that nature. But in your opinion, is the government doing enough to try and make sure that we're secure in the borders for the upcoming election?
There's always room for improvement. The government is organized rather uniquely for dealing with the cyber threat. There's no one central focal point for it. Cyber Command, with whom I've worked for several years, is in charge of securing networks associated with the Department of Defense. And so that's kind of where their responsibility stops. They're also responsible for reaching out and keeping attacks from reaching U.S. shores in cyberspace.
No.
The Department of Homeland Security is the one who has purview over domestic network security within the government. There's really nobody in charge of securing our public networks. I mean, the Department of Homeland Security will look at that problem, but if the state of Michigan, for instance, has a problem with their government networks, they've been attacked. So, Department of Homeland Security cannot just step in and take care of the problem. It's a Michigan problem. They need to request support from federal elements to deal with it.
And then they have a chance to be able now, considering that all the election is done by state run.
Absolutely.
Do you think that assists us in making sure that at least the majority of people are not hammered, or majority of states are not hammered because they're on separate separate uh, uh, internet situations.
Right. I'm told it's not, this is not exactly my line of work, but
Yeah.
I'm told that the states do not always trust the federal government.
I've heard that before. Yes.
So there's, that can be sometimes to their detriment. The federal government may know well how to enhance the security of networks within state governments, including election systems, but they don't have the authority to impose those solutions on the state. The state must request them, and they must agree to changes being made on their network.
Okay, and do you think that they should have some way of backing up the situation as well to make sure, like paper ballots or some other way of making sure that the election is not, unverifiable?
I will say that risk will always exist. We can talk about managing risk. We can't talk about eliminating it. In my opinion, over 40 years or so in the business, technology is not always your friend. The greater complexity the technology puts out there also creates more opportunities for vulnerabilities. Other than things like the hanging Chad, which we had in
Yeah.
previous elections, paper ballots are pretty reliable. What's not reliable is how humans use those and how election monitors keep them safe and preserve them for future review. There have been some problems there.
Is it same with organizations then, or even corporations and companies? Should they keep at least a possibility of some kind of real important information on plain paper and filed away in cabinets, like we did 50 years ago?
That is a possibility. I'm not sure there are enough cabinets left or enough space to put those to accommodate all the paper we would need to contain the information we've got. We've had an information explosion in the last 20, 25 years.
Do you think that people are overstimulated by it and actually block so much of it out now?
Stimulated in what way?
Well, in being overloaded with information, you can get almost anything in a drop of a hat.
I certainly am, and I've been a techie most of my life. And I used to pride myself on being up to date with all the latest technology and the latest hardware, the latest software. I just don't have enough time in my day anymore to do that. Yeah. And see all the news that CNN has, and see the videos that YouTube thinks I should look at, and to visit you on LinkedIn.
Well, I'm glad you visited me on LinkedIn. I appreciate it greatly. And I always give somebody a chance to plug whatever they need to plug here at the end of the interview. So, John, this is John Blake. Go ahead and give your plug.
You had questions that you sent me ahead of time to just stimulate my thinking, and some of them had to do with privacy of information. Mm-hmm. We've talked about security of information, and you had questions about Facebook holding information, Google holding information, and then selling that as a commodity. A lot of people get alarmed by that, and they say the Constitution doesn't allow that. Well, you're trying to interpret the Constitution. Usually that's done by attorneys. Well, I will say that that's the first place you want to look. Also, you want to look at all of the case law that goes back 50 years. Mm-hmm. The case law is lower courts interpreting what the Constitution says. And there was a case, I'm trying to remember what it was. I don't think it was Smith versus Maryland, but it was a similar case, where the presiding judge was the first one to come up with the concept of reasonable expectation of privacy.
Mm-hmm.
That was in a judicial decision. It has never been codified in law.
Mm. Yeah.
So if you wanted to take a first step at improving privacy, you have to define what privacy is
Mm.
and what the limits of it are. My personal belief is that needs to be done at the national level by Congress.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. I think also people have to be understanding that as soon as they put something on the web, it's on the web. You'll never be able to erase it. And there'll always be YouTubes or something that pick it up and transfer it on.
Absolutely. What goes on the web stays on the web.
Well, John, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I will hope to see you sometime, and maybe we get a chance to update some information on cybersecurity next time as well, and talk a little bit more about privacy.
Great. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you so much.